Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make a creamy garlic parmesan pasta with asparagus and then some herbed kind of New York strips and a like sage and thyme herby butter. And then we're going to bake up a batch of our quick challah bread that I have proofing in my oven right now. So let's start by, I'm going to turn my water up nice and high so we can get it on a good boil, and then we'll drop our bow tie noodles in because we're going to do the cute little bow ties for our pasta tonight. And then let's kind of mince up our fresh herbs that we're going to marinate our steak in. So I've got thyme, green onions. We'll use one green onion for this, and then some sage. So we're going to first take off, just get all of the leaves here. And we're going to also use some of this in our pasta to season up our pasta a little bit. So it's not just a Parmesan cream. It will be like an herbed Parmesan cream pasta with some nice kind of sage and thyme and garlic. Got to have your garlic. So I'm going to pull off my leaves here. Sage is a fuzzy leafed plant. So I always find that it tastes is much better when you can have a chance to toast it up or at least cook it in a little bit of oil versus just having it straight up and fresh. And then we have thyme here. We're going to pull off the little tiny leaves. I'm simply just going to separate them by kind of taking them off this way and leaving the long stick, little twig behind. And then we'll mince these up and we're going to marinate our steaks in there. Do kind of a little herb marinade, a little different than a lot of times when I do a steak because this is going to go with a pasta. So I want there to be some nice flavoring there as well. Yeah, and then we'll finish the steaks off in the oven because they are pretty thick. At least two of them are really thick. So we'll cook those off in the pan first. That way they have a little bit longer to sit. Okay, we've got our sage and our thyme. And take the bottom off of my green onion here. We'll do a coarse chop on it, and then I'm going to mince all of these herbs together. Here, let's drop. Now that we have a good boil on, let's drop our pasta in the pot. So we're just using our little bow tie noodles today. Nothing bougie. I'm going to do the whole box since my kids love bow tie pasta. And we are going to use a little bit of the pasta water and reserve a little bit to use in our sauce. So I'm going to salt it up. And then let me grab my pasta spoon and just give it a good stir so that none of those noodles stick to the bottom. And we're going to let that cook. I'll bring the temperature up now to all the way to high. I always like to let it come to a boil before I'm at my highest position. That way it can reach a little higher faster. And we're going to mince up our herbs together to kind of create this just lovely herby paste that we'll rub over our steaks. And then we'll use a little bit of garlic, salt, and Worcestershire. So you just want to mince these up fine because when you're putting the spices on, the more cuts in the fresh herbs, the flavors will come out. If you want to use dried herbs, you'll need to use a little bit less than the amount of fresh because dried herbs pack a punch on there. So they're pretty strong, so you don't need quite as much as you do with the fresh.
Do you have a question? What cut of steak?
So we have New York strips. Although it's funny, I have the New York strips that are from Publix and the New York strips from Target. And you can tell there's a difference on there. We had the ones from Publix and I needed to cook them up. And so when I was at Target, I was like, oh, I'll grab two more. Those look like pretty nice steaks. I always don't ever think of, our Targets all have like mini kind of grocery stores in them. They're not super Targets, but you know how they have that little kind of grocery store in it. And I'm always surprised at how kind of like really good quality their meat is. Okay. So we've got our herbs here. Nice and fine. Go rinse my hand just a little bit. And then I'm going to grab my Worcestershire sauce and my garlic salt because for some reason I did not set out my spices. Probably too busy thinking that we're going to get snow. At least my kids are very wishful thinking that they're going to get snow tonight. I don't think they're going to get snow, but I hope they do because, you know, let the kids dream. And let's kind of we'll do our little switcheroosies here. We're going to give a little drizzle of Worcestershire over each of the steaks. This is going to help break down the fat on the steak, makes the steaks really juicy. In there, because it's a vinegar type base thing, you don't actually end up tasting vinegar at all when you cook it, but it is amazing and just makes for the juiciest. Of course, our garlic salt. So a good sprinkle over because these are pretty good cuts. A little bit of black pepper. This does not want to open. Doesn't want me to have the little tong. Okay, we're just going to have to be a little bit careful and do it out of this one. Okay. And then we're going to take our minced up herbs. We'll sprinkle a little bit over each one. And then I'm going to kind of pat those herbs down in here. Help them kind of stick onto each steak. Let's give them a flip, and we're going to do the exact same on the other side. I'm going to try to do this all with one hand over here to keep it nice and clean. So we're going to start with our Worcestershire. Nice, again, little drizzle over each. Our garlic salt. A little black pepper. Now, I got to be really careful because this is not my dominant hand and I don't want to shake a little too heavy. There we go. And our minced up herbs. Again, we're going to reserve a little bit of them to go in our pasta sauce, but we do want a good amount on our steak. And when these cook up, they're just going to have a lot of great flavor. Okay, we'll pat these again down into the steak, let them kind of seal on there. And then I'm going to wash my hands. We're going to let those kind of sit and marinate for just a few seconds. They don't need a whole lot of time before we start kind of cooking them up. And we will cook these off 2 at a time because they are fairly large steaks. Okay. While we're waiting for those to marinate, I'm going to give our noodles a little bit of a stir. Once our noodles are done, I'm going to put our challah in. I have it still proofing in the oven. It's my quick challah recipe, which is always, I made it like maybe 30, 45 minutes ago. So it's one of those recipes that you can get a really cool piece of fun bread up really fast. The trick is just using a little bit of extra yeast in it.
How was lunch?
Lunch was excellent. It was like that perfect kind of little bit of spice to it with the andouille sausage, and it was just so kind of creamy things. The muffins were such a hit. So we're already down there's just a few left on there. Teddy really, really liked the muffins. He really loved the orange glaze on them, so that was kind of cool. I wasn't sure how he's going to like the cranberries because they're pretty, cranberries are very tart. But and he's not a super sour kid, but he liked it a lot. In fact, he ate part of his muffin and he left it up on the counter. And I was like, oh, he's not going to eat the rest. So I went and finished it. And then he comes back and he's like, where's my muffin? And I was like, oh, you can have another muffin. The muffin, it's gone. It is not through. He's like, you throw it away. And I'm like, yep, I threw it away. I was like, nope, I enjoyed it. It was delicious. And I was like, you can have another one, which then when he put it down a few minutes later, I needed to finish that part too. So they were good. They were like perfect, perfect cranberry orange muffin. It just had the right balance of everything. That tart with the sweet. I feel like the glaze gives the perfect sweetness to the tartness of the cranberry, especially since we used fresh cranberries. Okay, we're going to mince up our onions fairly fine for this. I'm only going to use half of my yellow onion because we are going to top our pasta off with some green onions as well. Put this over here. And then we're going to prep our asparagus. With asparagus, you need to take off the bottom inch or so, sometimes a little bit more of it. Otherwise, it's going to be really dry and stringy, almost as if you're chewing on a stick. So always cut it off. That way you have just the nice tender part of the asparagus left. You might feel like you're wasting a lot, but trust me, it's not good. It's going to be, you'll be just chewing on it nonstop. It'll be like if you have, I feel like, in the country and they got like the piece of straw sticking out of your mouth like that. That's what it'd be like you're chewing on. And then since we're going to do them in our pasta, I'm not going to keep them in their full forms. I'm actually going to kind of chop them up on there, but I'm going to do it in a kind of a pretty, almost in a julienne way where I have them kind of cut at an angle. So they look a little bit nicer versus a flat cut. And then simply what I'm doing is I'm kind of just holding my knife down at an angle and I kind of cut through it, and that gives you your pretty kind of cut there. Makes it, elevates it a little bit. It looks just a little bit nicer than the flat cut. You know what they say, sometimes just the look can sell you on something. Even though they say don't judge a book by cover. But you're going to judge your food by the way it looks. I remember I always said that I invited when in high school, one of my best friends at the time, I invited her over and I had made this soup called the soup of the balcony aws, which is one of my favorite soups. And she was so hesitant to try it because it's one of those comfort soups that just don't look pretty. It's not a masterpiece looking at, but it has so much flavor in it. And she was so hesitant to try it. And then she ate it and she was like, this is the best soup I've ever had. And I was like, it is the best soup ever. But it doesn't look like it's going to be as delicious as it is. Let's give this a quick stir. We're kind of getting close on here. I'm going to test them. About 2 more minutes. Since we're getting close on that, let's get out our quick challah. I just made a half batch of it. So I do have this recipe card available for everyone. It's called My Quick Challah. You'll have to kind of dig for where I've posted it in the past. But this is one that you can make in like an hour. And so the trick is to get it to kind of rise up nicely in this hour is you add more yeast than you think. You're going to add a whole tablespoon. This is for a half batch. A whole batch is going to have 2 tablespoons, which can give you a really big braid. But you add a whole tablespoon of yeast, and then there's sugar, honey, salt, egg, olive oil, and bread flour and water in here.
So yeah, question. Are you prepping any sourdough tonight or tomorrow?
I am. I have a whole, let's see, I'll pop it over here. It's doing its proofing before I shape it. So I've got it on here. You can see we've already got some bubbles forming on it. I made this up a little bit after lunchtime. I fed my starter this morning. So I'll shape it up tonight and put it in the fridge so that we can have sourdough tomorrow. I feel like it's been a long time, even though we all had sourdough last week. For my family, I baked up a couple loaves for them, and I remember I brought them over and I put one loaf down and I had one separate, and the first loaf was gone within like 10 minutes because everybody just came. You know how sourdough is. And with a large family, it just goes so fast. And I kept saying, oh, I need to make another loaf. I need to make another loaf. But I just wasn't home to feed my starter and to get it going because I was just over at my parents' house the whole time. There we go. So we mixed 1 egg with a little bit of water to make an egg wash, and we're going to brush this over our challah here. And you want to make sure you coat it, because if you miss a spot, it won't have that nice kind of shine that you get on a challah. Same thing like with a brioche. You need this egg wash to give you that really pretty look to it. So we're going to brush this over, kind of coat it up, make sure you get in all of your basket weaves. Now, the trick to getting a pretty braid like this is not a 3-piece braid. It's actually 4 pieces that you braid together. If you just do the traditional, like how my hair is braided, that's 3 pieces. But to get the pretty challah braid, you use 4 or 6 or 9. There's several different ways where you can use lots of them, but there's the basic one is with 4 braids. It gives you that really pretty thing. Let's check our noodles here. I'm gonna get one little brush because I think they're just about ready. And then we'll reserve a little bit of the pasta water before we take it out. But you want to cook your noodles to right at an al dente. Perfect. Which is going to be where they still have a little bit of firmness to them, but they're not hard. You don't want them super soft because, again, we're going to be making a sauce, and I always put my pasta in my sauce so that it can soak up that extra flavor. So always cook it at al dente or just a smidge before. We're going to reserve a little bit of this pasta water. This is going to help bulk up our sauce without having to use a lot of cream or other fillers in it. This starchy water is great for adding that velvety texture to it without kind of thinning out the sauce. So I'm just going to reserve about 2 cups. I don't know if we'll use it, but it's better safe to have a little bit more than to have not enough. And you can see just the starch in it from the pasta. And then we'll go strain this.
The question, how long did the challah take?
The challah, I started working on it like 45 minutes ago max. Right at around, I want to say I worked at like 7:40 is when I was pulling out the ingredients to make it. So that's like going on like, I guess now 50 minutes ago. So the dough was probably made 40 minutes ago. And then I popped it in the oven to kind of proof. It just needs a minimum of, you do about 10 minutes of it proofing in the after you knead it up, and then you braid it, and then it needs about 30 minutes of proofing with that. We're going to put it in our oven at 400 degrees, and this is only going to bake for about 15 minutes. It doesn't take long. Pop it in there. I'm going to set my timer for 15 minutes. We'll let it bake up there. With it, you could also add on like poppy seeds, sesame seeds, garlic, salt, Parmesan cheese. There's lots of little different toppings you could add on it to add different flavors, Italian seasoning. I like to keep it pretty basic and there because then it can be used so much. I'm going to grab a trivet over here to put my pasta on, and then we'll grab our big pan.
What kind of sauce are you making tonight?
I'm going to do a garlic Parmesan sauce with some fresh herbs in it, so an herby garlic Parmesan sauce. Okay, let's get our steak seared off. So I'm going to heat up my pan pretty high so we can sear it off on both sides, and then we'll finish it up in the oven. I'm going to, since I'm going to do a high heat sear, I'm just going to use olive oil in it. Butter, you can't sear off in a high temperature. It's better for if you're going to do that sear and then finish with a basting in the butter. But we're going to finish these off in the oven. So use oil instead of butter because you'll burn the milk solids in it. I'm going to put just enough in there to kind of coat it for both steaks. I'm going to cook my fatter steaks first. That way they can rest a little bit longer while I cook the second ones so that my second ones, which are a little bit thinner, don't overcook. Over here, we're going to turn on my pan, and I'm going to use a mixture of olive oil, and I'll do butter in a little bit. I like to kind of do the mixture of it because I'm using my pasta pan, which is actually a 6-quart saute pan, but it transfers heat really, really well, and butter tends to brown pretty quickly in here. So once I saute up my onions and my spices and herbs and garlic and asparagus, then I'll add some butter to make the rich sauce. Okay, let's get our onions in here. So again, we have a half of a yellow onion. I'm going to grab a pair of tongs. Get out 2 tongs. We'll use 1 for our steak here. I'm going to kind of coat them in the end things. And I'm going to have my heat over about a 4 here, not too high. Because again, a metal pan like this, like the all-clad, conducts heat a lot faster than a non-stick pan, such as the Hexclad. So if your heat is too high on your metal pan, you are likely to burn your veggies. So I always turn my heat down just a little bit lower because it does conduct heat a little bit higher and a little bit faster than a nonstick. Kind of feeling for that residual heat. While we're waiting for that, let me get this out of my way because knowing me, I will knock it over. Let's get our garlic minced up because we'll add that garlic in, and then our herbs next, and then our asparagus. So since garlic is going to be pretty prominent in here, I'm going to actually use a good amount of cloves here. Take a couple of them back. But it's going to be about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half once I've minced it up of the fresh garlic. Now you can always use garlic if you want. The key difference between garlic and garlic is the acidity of it. Garlic is more acidic than fresh garlic. And I think that's just kind of its preservatives to keep it fresh after you mince it up. So we'll mince this, get them nice and small because I do want a lot of that garlic flavor to come out. And then I think we're going to be ready to put our first steaks on here. Yep, I can feel that residual heat. So I'm going to again take my 2 fattest steaks. And we're going to pop them on here.
What knife brand do you use and prefer?
So I have been using my knife for like 17 years now. I got this as a wedding gift. This is the Wusthof Classic. So I got a knife set as a wedding present. I absolutely love it. Hence it's 17 years and still going strong. So it tells you that it's got to be a pretty good knife. All you have to do is it comes with a honing steel in its set. And you just have to sharpen it up every couple weeks, depending on how often you use it and what you cut with it. But it's really easy to sharpen, and I love. This is their big chef knife on it. I do have them in my Amazon storefront that I put in there, all the ones that I have, because I love it. Now, this is the classic series. They do have a gourmet series, and don't think gourmet is better than classic, because gourmet is the affordable version versus classic is more expensive. And the main difference, they're both really sharp knives, is classic is heavier, gourmet is much lighter. It's a much thinner blade, much lighter. Okay, we've got our garlic. Get our onions stirred up here. And we'll add in our garlic, kind of toast up for a second. And then we'll add in our butter and herbs and our asparagus. So I've got that. Let's add in some of our butter now so it can kind of infuse with that garlic. We're going to do about 2.5 tablespoons. Now with garlic, you just have to be pretty careful. It can go from being kind of a nice golden brown to crispy and burnt really fast. So just watch it. Don't have it on too high and don't leave it alone for too long. But once you put it in there, it just smells wonderful. There we go. So we'll let that butter kind of melt up nicely. Beautiful. And we might add a little bit more. We'll see what we need in our sauce when we get there, but we'll let that kind of crisp up nicely. I'm going to just move these a little bit apart. Let's see. Pretty nice. We got our good sear going on it. Again, I'm not cooking my steak all the way through. I'm searing it off to get the nice little char on it. That way we can finish it off in the oven so that it doesn't dry out too much. If you kind of cook it in the pan, especially with the thick one, over a high heat, you're going to cook the outside and that will get really tough before you get a nice kind of medium rare in there. So we'll sear it off about a minute to a minute and a half on each side. And then I'll sear off the next two and then we'll finish them off in the oven to get that nice kind of even cook.
Have you ever done a chimichurri on steak?
I have. I do love a good chimichurri sauce on there, especially like in the summer when my garden is really full of either cilantro or parsley, because you can do either parsley or cilantro based chimichurri. I think it's just absolutely fabulous. And my daughter, my oldest daughter, she loves it too. She's all for the sauces and the herb butters and anything to put on there. So she definitely loves it as well. But it's one of those things where I like it when my garden's fresh. This summer, my cilantro did not thrive well. I think it was just in a little bit too sunny of a spot because it wilted. And then what I thought was crazy was, I don't know what type of bug was there. It's slugs or something ate a whole bunch of the cilantro, which was strange. And so I think it was slugs maybe. I always have little garden pests. One year, wasn't my cilantro, but my dill had about 100 caterpillars on it. So I'm not sure what about the dill made the caterpillars, I guess, love it. But they were all making like their little cocoons or I guess chrysalises because there were caterpillars on it. And I just thought that was really cool. Teddy loved it. He was just like, oh, I had to come out there and you could just, there were so many of them. Okay, we're going to pop these off. Again, these are still rare in the middle. Again, we're just searing them off on both sides and we will finish them in the oven. There we go. And then when we do, we'll kind of put them all in this pan and we'll kind of make room for them. Okay. We've got our thyme and our sage in here. I'm letting it kind of move up. You can see our onions and our garlic are just getting this nice kind of crispy golden caramelization to them to really bring out their flavors, which is just going to make them absolutely delicious. You want to really let them have a moment to kind of infuse into the butter, into the oil, so that you get those flavors. Because once we start adding in some of our pasta liquid and whatnot, you're not going to really come out as much. When you mix a spice with like a fat, like an oil or butter, it really enhances its flavor. these guys seared off. And then we'll pop it there. I think we're ready to put our asparagus in now. I'm going to kind of coat it around. And then this is where I'm going to see if I need a little bit more butter or oil, because if my asparagus takes too much off of the bottom of my pan, I'll need a little bit more. It looks like I need about a smidge more, about another half a tablespoon or so. Because you don't want to leave your bottom of your pan too dry, or that's when your spices and your little bits of garlic and onion will burn. Okay, we'll get that in there. And then we're going to let these I'm going to spread them out in a nice even layer. And once they get to a nice kind of vibrant green, if you look now, asparagus has more of a pale green. When it gets to that bright, vibrant green, that's when you know it's going to be at a more of a tender crisp. It's going to have that bitterness from the rawness gone. So you just have to wait until it gets out of that pale color for it.
You have a question? How many aprons do you own?
Like 15. It's kind of my thing this year. I've been really on to aprons and changing them out and getting colors of them. I find like I get stuck on an apron for like a couple of days, and then I realize I'm like, oh, I really got to wash this apron. Put it in there. I think today's the last of it. I made muffins on it earlier, so kind of goes in there. I try to wear, one, switch it up, but I have a lot of them. I actually found my Christmas apron, which has a tomten on it. It was gifted to me by my mom. It was one of hers, but it's like a Swedish apron, and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to have to get that one out soon on there. I used to never really wear aprons, and then I realized that I ruined so many of my sweatshirts with like grease stains or oil splatter that I realized the benefits of having an apron. Okay, we're going to pop our steak on here. All of them are going to go, if I can, there we go. Let's see if I can rearrange. I think this guy will fit better right there. Yeah. Trying to get our Tetris in there. You want all of your steak to touch the base of your pan, because that's where you're going to get the heat. And we're going to go pop this in the oven to kind of cook off. This is going to need about, there we go. I have to rearrange, it's kind of heavy. This is going to need about 5 to 8 minutes to get to a medium rare, which is perfect timing because we got about 45 seconds left on our challah, which is looking fabulous. So I actually think we can take it out. Look at that gorgeous challah. Let me grab my oven mitts.
You have a question? Do you have an oven under your stove, and do you ever use it?
I do have an oven under my stove. Let me put my timer here I'm going to just do it for 5 minutes, and that way I'll know I have about 2 minutes to get over here. I do use it when I'm doing a whole bunch of cooking and baking. I store a lot of my baking sheets in there. The only thing that I consistently use it for is my bread proofing, because I don't have to take everything out to proof my bread. I just got to shove things around, and then I can put my bowl or my baking sheet in there. But I do use it for there. I love my wall oven a little bit better because I feel like it's a bit more accurate, simply because my oven shares the burner, and the burner brings residual heat down. So it can kind of change the temperature of what you're baking in. So I find that one's a lot more consistent over there. So here is our quick challah. Again, I do have this recipe card. This was a freebie for everybody. I think it was out in the spring, so you'll have to do some searching. This is a half batch of it. So the recipe card I gave you is for a full one, which can make a really big one, or you can make 2 loaves out of it. But it is such a simple, gorgeous one. I started making this at 7:40, and we've got it pretty much out. So it is like from start to finish within an hour. And when I say I started warming up the water to bloom the yeast. So it is a bread that you can bake up pretty quick, and it's kind of a nice showstopper. It's a really pretty easy one, and it's really simple to do the braids. It's not as complicated as you might think. It is a simple one. Okay, let's get our sauce going because our steak is going to be ready soon on here. So we're going to add in, let me get my garlic salt over here. We're going to add in our pasta water here. A little bit at a time. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic salt. And I think I'm going to actually grab, let's do a good, and grab a little bit of chicken bouillon to flavor up a little bit of this broth. Since we're not doing anything super fancy with it, just keeping it simple. So we're going to use, you don't need a lot. I'm going to just use about a teaspoon of it in here. This will just give a little bit of savoriness to the broth, to the cream base of here. That just adds a light little bit of flavor, which I think will pair well with the herbs. You can see our asparagus has this nice kind of vibrant green color coming to it. Okay, we're going to add in a little bit more of our starchy water. And don't dump it all in at one time. You want to go low and slow with it, kind of let it incorporate. We'll do a little bit more, and then we'll add in our cream and our Parmesan. We'll put our noodles in, kind of toss it, and then we'll take our steak out, and I will slice some of it to place over the top of our pasta, and we'll be ready to serve up. So just a pretty easy, quick, but delicious dinner based on some steaks I needed to cook up because we were going to make them last week, and then my family decided to go out to dinner. I feel like we ate out so much, or well, I shouldn't say we ate out. We had food kind of picked up or catered a lot last week. We used to, a couple of years ago, it was like every family had a night where they would cook for it. But once your family gets so large, like 40 people, that gets a little bit hard, and a lot of dishes. So we find that now we just kind of cook Thanksgiving meal, and then we get like Greek food one night, Mexican food one night, food that's, it's like a meat and three place here. That's pretty simple to kind of cater for a large group. Okay. I'm going to add that. I'm going to taste it right now, see if I want to add any more. I don't think we need. There's still a little chicken bouillon on there, so let me try it again. I think we might use it all. You know what? We almost use all of it. We use like 1 3/4 because, again, I'm going to add some cream to this, so I don't want it to be too much liquid. And then we're going to add just about a 1/3 cup of cream. You don't need a whole lot. A little will go a long way in making this sauce. The richness, especially with that silky kind of broth on there. And we'll go grab our steaks out here in just a second. Good. I don't think we need to add any more. And then before we grab our steaks out, I'm going to put a little bit of Parmesan. I'll have some freshly grated over the top, but we're going to use a little pre-shredded just to save your arm, because otherwise you're going to need a lot. So I'm going to sprinkle it over. We're going to let it melt before we mix it in. Then we'll add our noodles. But while we wait, let's go grab our steaks out of the oven for this. Okay. So again, we put our steaks that we seared off in the oven. They were in at 400, so just the same temperature that our things put for about 5 minutes. I'm gonna pull them out. Let me give them a nice little touch. Perfect, perfect. And remember, before you cut and open your steak, before you clean, you got to let it sit for about 5 minutes because you don't want to cut into meat that is just taken out of the oven, because what will happen is all of those juices will fall out, and then you're not going to get that nice, you'll get a drier meat at the end. Okay. So we have our steaks there. We're going to let them sit and then we'll flip because that bottom of this pan has a lot of great flavor from the spices that we'll put on there in a second. We've got our cheese and our cream in here. You can see that Parmesan has just about melted here. And I will say, the one thing that's nice about using grated Parmesan cheese over freshly grated is Parmesan cheese is one of the few cheeses that they don't add the anti-caking agent into it because it's a drier cheese. So it naturally doesn't stick to each other. So that's not one where you have to kind of worry about that like you do with some of the softer cheeses. The main difference I have found between the two cheeses is freshly grated is much softer than pre-shredded.
Could you use broccoli instead of asparagus?
Yes, I was actually thinking about using broccoli, but I didn't have any. But I was like, broccolini would be great with this. You could, all of those kind of like green beans. You could even think spinach would work well with this on there. So yes, all of those kind of flavor profiles would work really well. Okay, I'm going to coat all of our noodles up. You see, I didn't add any oil or toss my noodles with anything in there because if you toss them with oil before you throw them into the sauce, your pasta is not going to soak up the flavors of that sauce as well. So let's spin it around, kind of coat it up. And you see how it's just soaking up that liquid and really coating and bringing up all those flavors, which is again why you want to cook it at about an al dente because it has a little bit of that liquid to kind of coat up. Let's add a smidge more Parmesan now. And we'll mix it in. And then, of course, we'll mix some freshly grated on the top because that one is a little bit better to taste. Although, you know, it's really funny. Every time I make like a pasta like this, my son goes, do you have any of that cheap Parmesan? You know, the one in the container that you shake? And I'm just sitting here and I was like, I do not have any of that Parmesan. And I'm always sitting there and I'm like, I should remember to buy it for him because he really loves that Parmesan cheese. And to me, that just, it tastes like sawdust, but he really loves it. And I was like, you know, they have it at their school. And so I'm just like, oh, he loves it. So I should get it for him. I mean, he'll eat the nice one. He'll suffer through and eat it. And I'm like, kid, you don't even know what you're missing. Okay, let's get a few green onions chopped up to add on there to just add a little bit of that fresh onion flavor, especially since we have that nice little herby flavor in our pasta. Remember this, I'm going to put this on here because I will burn myself, and I already had enough bad luck with my mom's oven over Thanksgiving, as you can see. So I'm going to put that there as a reminder that that is hot.
You have a question? Any desserts or fruit tonight?
So we have some leftover muffins that will be whatever the kids want for their dessert. And fruit, I went shopping today. So the kids will have their option because the pineapple isn't ready to cut up. So they have raspberries, strawberries, blueberries are their options. So they've got lots of berries to pick from. And all of my kids like different berries. They don't like the same berry. My son, Torin, loves blueberries. Evie loves raspberries and Lena loves strawberries. They don't all like the same ones. It's always funny how it is. We'll throw in our green onions, again, to add just a little bit of that fresh green onion flavor to it. Kind of coat it in here. Beautiful. Now I'm going to turn this off and let that sit kind of residual here. And then I'm going to grab one of the steaks to kind of slice up on here. So we'll use, let's see which one I want to do first. I think I always try to pick which one is because you want to let the ones that are more ready, like more medium rare, the rare ones sit the longest, and the ones that are more you can cut up first. Okay, so we've got our steak here. I'm just going to cut off a little bit of that fat here, but you can see we've got this nice, beautiful sear with the pink inside. How beautiful. And these are our thinner ones versus our thicker ones, which will have that nice, I'm going to cut this fat vein off right here as well. But they'll have that more of that lovely red kind of medium rare is what I like to go for in a steak. Again, if you like them cooked a little bit longer, just leave them in the oven a little bit longer after searing off. But medium rare is as everyone in my family, I've got them all on what I like. So let's get ready to serve up dinner here. I'm going to do a little switcheroo here. That way it's a little bit closer. And get our beautiful challah a little bit closer as well. And we're going to serve up our dinner. So for dinner tonight, we have a creamy garlic and asparagus pasta. We used our bow tie pasta, made a lovely sauce using fresh garlic, butter, olive oil, asparagus, sage, thyme, and a little bit of cream and Parmesan cheese. And we will top that with our seared steak that we seasoned with thyme and sage as well, and we seared off in our pan and then finished off in our oven. And then of course we will serve it with a chunk of our beautiful challah. Just look how soft and fluffy that is for dinner. Well guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our dishes at home, you can just go to our page, search for what we made, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my big 6-quart hedge-clad pan in there, or all-clad pan in there, my hex-clad, my knives, my cutting boards, all the different things I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.